first interpretations of material culture were introduced by notable ethnologist and archaeologist Augustus Pitt Rivers. In 1875, he introduced the concept of material culture as outward signs and symbols of particular ideas in the mind. He encouraged his colleagues to consider the importance of interpreting extant physical remains in this manner. Early opposition. The prevailing theories of anthropology at the time were related to the cultural historical approach, which held that cultural meaning could not be taken from man-made objects recovered from past cultures. Through this interpretation, material culture is relegated to the archaeological record only. Processual archaeology was in part a theosophical response or criticism of the culture historical approach. Processual archaeology holds some of the tenets of cultural ecology. Pitt Rivers may be pleased to know that in processual archaeology, material culture is representative of human ideas, and are studied for further understanding for what purpose these objects were shaped, and what can be interpreted about the human past and present from these objects. Defining and refining. Despite the endorsement of the concept of material culture by one of the most notable archaeologists of the 19th century, Pitt Rivers, the concept of material culture did not take hold until the last few decades of the 20th century. Since that time, the concept has flourished and is experiencing a number of redefinitions as the field gets more broad and inclusive. Here we will show the most general definitions of material culture and material culture studies, followed by some individual definitions that demonstrate the breadth of what counts as material culture and how people study it. Material culture, aspect of the humankind biosocial environment that has been purposely shaped according to cultural dictated plans. Material culture studies, the interpretation of past and present human activity through use of extant physical evidence. Researchers in the past have interpreted material culture in different ways, each reflecting their own disciplinary perspectives. The study of material culture may be broadly defined as the investigation of the relationship between people and things irrespective of time and space. The perspective adopted may be global or local, concerned with the past or present, or the mediation between the two. Material culture studies opens the question of the thingness of things. What is matter? How does it produce meaning, yield uses, constitute worlds? Material culture studies attends to the situation of things, their accredited associations, and meanings as they are successfully performed. Working with things is so rooted in experience, so tuned to how we perceive the world, so inductive that teacher and student become fellow observers, users, equally able to respond to the strangeness of this thing before them now. Things matter, and the knowledge they offer us transforms our sense of the habit worlds we live and make. Julian Yates. The rise of mass consumption was accompanied by a proliferation in objects and the multiplication of meanings, practices, and needs associated with these things. Material culture studies helps us to think about the objects and the cultural, political, and economic systems that created them. Will Scott. Material culture is the unpacking or mining of both historical and everyday objects to find the embedded ideas and concepts that define the surrounding society. Joyce Hill Stoner. Why does the study of material culture matter, and who does it matter to? It matters because we all live in a material world, but are educated in intellectual traditions that are too often abstract, ignore, or decontextualize physical objects and processes. What is the goal of material culture studies? The goal of material studies is epistemological. Epistemology is from the Greek word for knowledge or understanding, and describes a branch of philosophy concerned with the nature or theory of knowledge itself. Material culture studies seek to further the explanatory power of artifact knowledge to expand human understanding of itself. Is the past better explained with words or materials? Material culture, 56,000 years before present. Tangible form of past time persisting in present time. Material remains have a higher degree of evidential veracity than written word, and a lower incident of deliberate duplicity. To William Raji, pioneer of garbology, this provides quantifiable data largely independent of the basis of traditional interpretive techniques. Written documentation, 6,000 years before present. Material culture allows for broader cross-section of culture. The interpretation of written culture can be negatively affected by literacy rates and socioeconomic inequalities. It can therefore represent an unbalanced portion of the socioeconomic spectrum over the course of time. Material culture can represent a broader portion of that spectrum. Archaeological methods used to recover data. Throughout history, there has been numerous ways to extract and recover data representing material culture, and still there are more ways being developed today. Most of the methods used to recover and analyze draw parallels to those of general archaeology. One of the most common ways researchers attempt to find signs of material culture is through the surface survey method, one usually used and associated in the process of finding an archaeological site to begin excavation. Researchers are looking for any evidence of the landscape being altered by human activity, which would be considered a part of their material culture written into the archaeological record. Methods including background research about the area's history can divulge information about the physical artifacts that are found within the site. Other methods of extracting data from physical materials include actual excavation, soil analysis, seriation, various dating techniques, chronology building, use-wear analysis, and being able to identify natural as well as the behavioral patterns that affect site formation of the area. Unlike most documented data, material culture evidence in the past has been difficult to duplicate, publish, and make available to other researchers for further investigation and interpretation, due to the fact that it relies on a physical object for interpretation. One newly developed method archaeologists are using that is making a prominent entrance to the field is computer analysis of material culture. It's changing this historical problem. This new method gives multiple people the chance to analyze a single item at once, being able to share files as well as opening it up to new three-dimensional analysis, scale modeling, holography, and extremely exact mathematical measurements. Methodological problems. In this article, Material Culture Research and Historical Explanation, Schlereth points to what he identifies as gaps in the methodology so far. Schlereth claims that there is insufficient methodological reflection on the enormous selectivity usually operating in material culture evidence formation and survival. What artifacts are selected to survive as specimens and why? Does this selectivity skew the data of the archaeological record? Schlereth also encourages researchers of material culture to be aware that extant objects do not accurately represent the full range of possible markers or users. For example, users of various socioeconomic backgrounds or genders. Another problem with the study of material culture is the proper measure of human efficiency. The view of technology and material as progressively deterministic means that the significance of material remains can too easily be considered an example of success and progress simply for the reason that the material survived and was recovered.